Right, welcome to this episode of Intellectual Conservatism. This is episode 6. Today we're going to be focusing on the morality of abortion. Tomorrow I'm bringing on Albany Rose, an atheist and pro-life activist and a woman herself. But first, I want to kind of talk to Michael about this from an inspiring philosophy, because obviously I think that abortion is inherently, of course, a moral question. So, Michael, let's first start off by talking about the pro-choice person often makes. The pro-choice person says, I'm not pro-abortion. I just believe it's the right of the woman to make this decision. What do you think about that autonomy and liberty argument?
I mean, I would say that is just as dumb as someone in Northern America in the 19th century saying, look, I don't have any slaves, but I don't think we ought to start a war and invade the South to stop them from having slaves. That's just their choice. It's still morally wrong what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Abortion is still murdering a child. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how you could just say I'm okay with other people murdering. I wouldn't say that. I mean, that's just morally wrong.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous when you start comparing it to other things. Are you going to say that about female mutilation? Look, I'm not going to submit my daughter to female mutilation, but if those people in Africa want to do it, that's their choice. No, I want that to stop. I want their governments to make it illegal. And I think we should do everything we possibly can to make sure that every government of the world makes that illegal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and eventually as I've had these conversations with pro-choice people, I'll say, okay, so you believe that the only relevant thing here is liberty. And they'll say, no, I believe it should be cut off at maybe 14 weeks or whatever. And then I'll say, no, so there is something more fundamental than just your liberty claim. Right, it is the question of the humanity of the child. What does science first say about the humanity of the child?
What does what say?
Science.
I mean, everything I can find on this, they say life starts at conception, not when it's a sperm. Mm-hmm. So it's not. They love to use the whole claim. I mean, masturbation is genocide. No, sperm is not a human. A sperm carries half the genetic information, which makes a human. The sperm dies when it releases that genetic information, combining with the egg to form a zygote. When a zygote forms, that's a human at that point. End of story. That's according to science. Every scientific textbook, life begins at conception. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, that's when humanity begins. Now, the argument is that, well, maybe they're not conscious yet. Okay, when does consciousness come in? Wait, we don't have any scientific evidence to say that comes in at a certain point? Okay, well, when does it start to feel pain? Well, when it gets a nervous system. Okay, well, I mean, we have now been learning from studying plants that plants actually do have some sort of sense of pain, even though they don't have a traditional nervous system. So how do you know it's the same for an unborn child that hasn't been fully developed yet? You need to show some evidence that somehow the qualia or pain or consciousness comes into existence at a certain point in time. If you can show that consciousness comes into the womb, or it begins at like maybe 14 weeks or 13 weeks, okay, then the conversation changes. Maybe they would have a point, but we have no evidence at that point. As much as we know, life begins at conception. That's the beginning of your conscious existence at conception.
Yeah, and then I think the pro-choice person would obviously object that at some point there needs to be some type of characteristic that just being human alone isn't enough. So they might say you need sentience, you need let's say the ability to feel pain or whatever.
So people in vegetable states, not humans then? Can we just kill them off?
Some would even say yes. That's the thing though. Yeah.
That seems kind of ridiculous to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, who decides that? Unless they filled out like some sort of like living will paperwork that says I want to die if I'm in a vegetable state. Okay, that's their choice. You can make that argument that it's okay at that pace, but you don't have a right to kill someone just because they're in a vegetable state. There's no scientific evidence which shows they're somehow dead or they're not experiencing. I mean, I remember hearing, maybe it was a couple months or a year ago, someone came out of a vegetable state and he remembers everything while he was in that vegetative state. He knows because they put him in front of Barney, the purple dinosaur, every day to watch for years. And he remembers every bit of it. And it says he hated it, but he was stuck in this vegetable state. He couldn't tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's evidence that in being in a vegetable state, they're still conscious. They're still aware of their surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be a bad that's not a good comparison to say that we can kill people in a vegetable state.
Mm-hmm.
And if a fetus, an unborn child, which is still a human being, is compared to that, you cannot conclude that we can kill them. So I want some evidence to say that they're somehow, from a scientific standpoint, that they're not human. And then you could derive an ethical status that it's okay to kill them. But until you do that, you can't derive some sort of ethical difference.
Okay, and then, as you go down the rabbit trail of this argument, they'll start saying, first, let's go to the most popular one. What right do you as a man have to say about what a woman does with her body? That's the most popular section.
I like putting the chart on the screen. Okay, let's go over biology here. Okay, as you can see, this is a pregnant woman. This is her body. The fetus is not her body. That's just basic biology. I'm not saying that we should tell a woman what to do with her body. I'm saying she doesn't have a right to kill another body just because that body's inside of her.
Yeah.
That should be common sense. Take a thing about Siamese twins. Let's say two twins are born, they're Siamese, and they're connected at the hip, and one is growing better than the other one. The other one is kind of sickly, kind of dragging along. Does that Siamese twin have a right to kill his brother? No. So just because they're connected, you don't have a right to kill another individual. It's an unfortunate circumstance. And luckily with modern science, we can disconnect them and they can still keep going on. But what if they can't? You don't have a right to kill your brother just because they might be lagging behind you.
And then, of course, the argument's also going to be that the pro-life position is inherently misogynistic. It's inherently anti-woman. What's your response to that?
My response is how. All we're saying is we don't want to kill babies. We're not saying it's okay to kill female fetuses, but not male fetuses. No, we're saying you can't kill any fetus. It's about equality. It's about human equality. Mm-hmm. Just because someone is not born and doesn't have their own voice to speak up for themselves, that doesn't mean you have the right to kill them. The pro-life position is about human rights. It's about human equality. It's about giving everyone a fair voice, speaking for the victims that cannot speak for themselves. End of story. And if you want to throw out these straw man arguments about misogyny, I want some evidence, because there's a lot of women out there that are actually pro-life. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of women out there that are also atheists and pro-life. So you just can't claim that. If it was purely misogynistic, it would be an entire male movement. And they'd only be advocating that male fetuses should not be aborted.
Mm-hmm. And then, I've heard a lot of people claim that, think about that young teenage girl who's about to go to college. Maybe she's got a full ride scholarship. And then all of a sudden she has a kid and she's got to think about taking care of that child, going to college, managing these two things at once. And maybe her family isn't supportive, whatever. This child's not going to live a great life, and she's going to lose all of her progress and opportunities. Why not just have the abortion then? Or make
First of all, that I would claim that's total BS. We don't know that she's not going to manage it. When I was in college, I don't talk about myself that much, but when I was in college, I was in film school, and so one semester I did work on we'd work on our student films on the weekend. So I get up Sunday morning, I go work on our collective student film from like 8 a.m. to like 6 p.m. at location. Then I'd have to go work my security job all night. Then I got up and I had to go work my other job, or I had a freelance job that I had to go do. So I went and did that. Then I had class that evening. Then I had to go back to my security job Monday night. So I'd be awake for 48 hours trying to make ends meet and go to college full time. Okay, you can do it. Okay, it was really hard. I had to put a lot of work in it, and I understand it's not the same because I didn't have a kid at the time. I get that, but people can make it work. So for the idea that someone couldn't juggle it, I think that's not necessarily a good argument. You don't know that to be the case, so I don't think they can make that argument. Second of all, sometimes first of all, no one ever said life was going to be fair. And that still does not give you the right to kill someone. If I was poor, if I lost my job tomorrow, and it would be much easier if I just didn't have to feed my daughter, maybe I should just go put her down. I'll do it humanely. She'll go to sleep. She just won't wake up. She won't feel any pain. It'd be so much easier on me if I lost my job to put her down. You don't have a right to kill someone just because it's convenient for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's just the way the world works.
That's kind of the grounding of eugenics too. You know, you kill somebody because they're inconvenient to you.
Exactly, they're inconvenient to society or you. That's the basic of eugenics. It's no wonder that the abortion community came out of eugenics with Margaret Sanger. Isn't that right?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just going to interject a little comment here. I don't think it's a coincidence that Sanger and Singer sound quite similar.
Yeah,
But
that's ironic.
yeah, you know, and then the next objection is going to be, well, you know what? Life's imperfect. I'll concede that things aren't fair, but why not just make it safe? You know, make an abortion safe instead of having a girl go to a back alley and, you know, go through some really just, you know, the clothes hanger objection or something like that.
Yeah,
Or,
why don't we just make rape safe then? Why don't we have facilities where we kidnap women for these men because they're going to rape anyway, so we might as well just help them and make it safe for the women. No, rape is still wrong, regardless of people are going to do it illegally or not. People are going to do heroin. That doesn't mean we should make it legal. People, so you just because something is going to happen, that doesn't mean we ought to just allow it to happen.
yeah.
That's the same sort of arguments people made for slavery. Look, I may not agree with slavery, but it's going to happen, and we just got to let the South do its thing. We don't want to start a war. People could die over this issue. Our own soldiers could die fighting a war over slavery. Is it really worth it? Yes, it's absolutely worth it because slavery is a horrible thing. And if it was still in this country, I'd be advocating to fight a war to end it.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely horrible, and and so is abortion.
Okay, so I don't know if if I've covered every single pro-choice justification, but well, I mean, have you heard any like outlandish or maybe plausible justifications for the pro-choice position?
I mean, everyone goes to the whole rape thing. Well, what if a woman was raped?
Mm-hmm.
Should she be able to have abortion? And of course, here's my argument for that. Let's say it's a 10-year-old that was raped and she's pregnant and she's okay. That's first of all, that is like less than 1% of all the abortion cases that happen globally. This doesn't happen on a regular basis. If it does happen, abortion, again, pro-life people say abortion is okay if the mother's life is at stake. A 10-year-old pregnant, it's very likely she would not be able to carry the kid safely, given the amount of scientific evidence we have. If the mother's life is at stake, then everyone agrees, yeah, it's okay to have an abortion. If you have, I forget what it's called. I think it's like an abortion, or not an abortion, but a pregnancy where the fertilized egg doesn't go all the way to the uterus; it stops in the fallopian tube.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what that term is called, but when that happens, that would kill the child and the mother if it was carried to term. And abortion has to be done to save the life of the mother. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
You can, so everyone agrees an abortion is okay in that sort of circumstances. If a woman was raped, what they're usually doing is using this to marginalize the rest of abortions. That's all they're basically doing. And it doesn't necessarily work. I mean, as Ben Shapiro has noted this numerous times. Okay, if I would be willing to trade to say that, yes, you can have an abortion if there's a rape and incest case, would you agree with me the rest of abortions are morally wrong and should be outlawed? They almost all the times they say no. They believe in a woman's right to choose, a woman's right to choose to murder. So no, they're using it to marginalize.
Mm-hmm.
The basic policy is babies should not be killed. Rapists should be given life in prison. Or I honestly think they should be castrated. If we can absolutely prove someone was raped, then yes, they should. I mean, I think it's a horrible, evil thing that is given far too lenient of sentences in today's culture. A rape should be given far worse penalties as it is. I mean, I hope everyone agrees with that. But it's the whole rape thing. Okay, yeah, if the woman's life is at stake, if she's like a 10-year-old girl that was raped, that's a horrible thing, and it's very possible she's going to need to have an abortion to save her life. Because it's very likely that she's not a fully developed child at that point. She's still a child. She probably won't be able to carry the kid to term. It's very likely she's going to need an abortion. I don't know anyone who would be advocate that girl should have to carry the child. It's a very rare percentage of people.
I remember in one debate I had with somebody, somebody proposed back to me, oh, so what you're really saying is, you know, the mother's priority is what matters at the end. And I was like, no. What I'm saying is something along the lines of maybe Aquinas's double effect, or I don't know. What would you propose for that? And could you also explain double effect for those at home?
Well, Aquinas's double effect is that you're doing one thing, but it's causing two effects. One you like, one you don't like. So when you're performing an abortion on a woman that is dying from having a baby for whatever reason, you're not trying to kill the child. That's just a double effect. You're trying to save the life of the mother. So you have two effects. You're not trying to murder, but that is part of the equation. That's part of what's going into the fact, and you trying to save the life of the mother. So you invoke Thomas Aquinas' double effect when there's certain circumstances. You're not trying to murder, but it just is a necessary effect.
Yeah, and what's really also amazed me too is just how much, the pro-choice side has distorted the pro-life side. They say you're just pro-birth, you don't care about what happens after, the child goes into the world, but then, you have pro-life activists going out trying to help and reach out to these women. You have adoption agencies, literally saying, like, why do people keep on going to get abortions when the adoption process is completely feasible?
Right.
So, from your perspective and what you know about the pro-life movement, like, what things have you seen that are good about the pro-life movement and things that have been distorted by the pro-choice?
Well, for example, I remember watching a couple of weeks ago. I try to keep an open mind, and I watch a lot of different political shows, and I read different political things. So I was watching John Oliver last week tonight. I actually think he's kind of a funny guy. I like watching his show. I don't entirely agree with him on politics. But he did a whole thing about how these evil pro-life communities are going out and offering free ultrasounds and help if the woman would carry the pregnancy to term. And I'm like, you have got to be the biggest spin doctor on planet Earth if you're pointing out that these pro-life groups, which are offering free diapers, clothes, food, if the mother will just not murder their child. And that's a horrible thing because they're manipulating these women into keeping their child.
Yeah.
This is the most ridiculous nonsense. I was angry at that show because it was a total misrepresentation. And the funny thing is, a couple pro-life women who run a lot of these resource centers wrote some blogs after saying, hey, the funny thing, I was actually interviewed for that show. They didn't show my interview, surprisingly, because I talked about how we help women. We give them all the support they need. We give them financial aid. We give them food for their baby. We give them food for themselves. We try to help them with clothes. We try to help them find a daycare. So this idea that the pro-life community just wants to make women carry babies and then suffer with them is a ridiculous argument. That's not true at all. I used to do volunteer work for an organization I lived in Pittsburgh called the Pregnancy Resource Center. It was in Upper St. Clair in Pittsburgh. And I did videos for them at a huge discounted rate. It's like 90% off. I just needed a little bit to just help me get through college at the time. And I walked into the facility, it's covered with just like baby clothes and diapers and bottles and formula, and everything a mother could need. And they provided counseling. They provided all sorts of things. So this is a ridiculous argument. They're always trying to strawman the pro-life community. It's absolutely absurd. And then what was the other part of your question?
Oh, I think the other part was just what the pro-life community has done for women. I think you kind of went into that, but do you have any more on that?
I mean, it's just they've offered so much support. I know dozens of churches that donate to these pregnancy centers that try to help them going, to try to help these mothers get the resources they need to raise the child. So I remember filming testimonies of some of these women. They're talking about, like, I didn't have any money, I didn't have any clothes, I just had to have an abortion. But then I decided to check out the resource center, and they gave me everything I needed. They gave me the support. They helped me find a good job. I mean, they've helped me with, they've helped me get the financial aid I need for schooling to get a better job to provide for my child. So it's absolutely absurd to suggest that the pro-life community just wants to tell these women they have to have a baby and then just force them to take care of it on their own. That's absolutely ridiculous. I have seen so much resources and money poured into these centers to try to help women. So, and you can go to any one of them. I would tell any pro-choice person, go talk to these pregnancy resource centers. Call them on the phone. Ask them what they're doing. They're not just sitting there guilting women into having a baby. They're called resource centers for a reason. They have resources.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'll close off with one question, and that'll be the end of the interview. But what are the ethical and maybe even public policy ramifications of disregarding just the inherent value and sacredness. And I don't want to use a religious word because, of course, you can be secular and purely philosophical for this argument. But what's the ethical and public policy ramification of disregarding the inherent value of human life?
It can create a slippery slope. Now, that it can be a fallacy to claim that, but if we start saying that we get to define life, we get to define when life begins, that does open a door to other things. And you sort of start to see it because other people, philosophers have speculated, should people be forced to die at a certain age? Like, let's not have people living to 120. Maybe we should just ethically have people murdered after a certain age so they're not a drain on society. Because a lot of the arguments that the pro-abortion crowd puts out there is these single mothers are a drain on society. They cannot provide for their kid. They have to get help from society. They're draining society. We need to just let them murder their children so that society does not have to provide for them. So if you're going to make that claim, you might as well say that, well, what about other people that are draining societies? What about the mentally handicapped? What about the old? What about people in vegetative states? Where do you draw the line? If we're going to start defining right to life based on how it benefits society, that has horrible ramifications. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it played out very horribly in the past, as we always have.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I hope that, as we have more people like you coming out, more organizations like mine, trying to get the pro-life message out, that there can be a significant cultural change. Michael, thank you for everything. I hope you have a great day. This has been the 6th episode of Intellectual Conservatism. Tomorrow we're having Albany Rose, a pro-life activist, a young woman and an atheist herself, defending the pro-life position.
Oh yeah, I love her. She's awesome.
Yeah, so, Michael, if you share this on your page and tune in tomorrow, this is going to be a great time. But Michael, thank you, and thank you to all the people who have watched this episode. All right, see ya.